Texas football comes out with a dominant win in the Alamo Bowl. Texas basketball continues to soar up the rankings, and 4 teams are crowned state champions as the Texas high school football season comes to an end. All this and more coming up on College Press Box. Welcome into our first College Press Box of 2021. We have a jam-packed half hour of Texas sports coming up for you, so let's get to it. First up, though, we're going to take a quick leap back into 2020 as Texas football closed out its season against Colorado in the Alamo Bowl. Here we go out to San Antonio. The Longhorns would go off to a great start, too. Just 2 minutes in, Bijan Robinson's going to get the edge and get in for 6. Robinson had a huge game, 183 rushing yards on just 10 carries. Later on, midway through the first quarter, Sam Norrie's going to look across the middle, and he's only going to find a white jersey. DeMarvion Overshown coming up with a pick. It was a rough night for Colorado offensively as they turned the ball over 3 times, and Texas would take full advantage of that turnover. Ellinger on the screen pass. Bijan Robinson finds the hole, and he's gone. 14 yards for the score. Texas leads 14-0. Colorado cuts in the lead. They trailed 17-10 at half, and Casey Thompson had to come in after Ellinger knocked out of the game with an injury. New quarterback? No problem. Thompson finds Josh Moore not once, but how about twice in 2 consecutive possessions as the Longhorns go up 31-10. If they would start to run away with this one, San Antonio. Colorado trying to get back into it late in the third. Jared Broussard rumbles through the middle for 3 yards to cut the Texas lead to 34-16. But the Longhorns weren't having it in the fourth. Casey Thompson showing that he's got a cannon as he lets one fly. Calvante Dixon, you can say goodnight to that one. A 73-yard bomb to put the Horns up 48-23. They go on to win this one 55-23. They finish the season 7-3. Now here's John Kelley with additional coverage from the Alamo Bowl.
On December 29th, the 20th-ranked Texas Longhorns beat the Colorado Buffaloes 55-23 at the 2020 Valero Alamo Bowl. Due to many players foregoing the bowl game and some injuries, many younger players were called up. Freshman Bijan Robinson gave his thoughts on the players that stepped up.
We have a lot of young guys that stepped up, in this game, and that made an impact. And, Casey came in, when we needed him most and made a big impact the way that he did. But I feel that how these guys made an impact in this game and what they can do leading forward, in the offseason and for the next season is good to see what they did for this game.
The offensive line was particularly hit hard and had many younger players. Bijan gave his thoughts on how they prepared for this game and going forward.
Well, they've been doing a lot. We've been trying to work up a lot of schemes, for them because, we're all young guys and we're all trying to learn, different ways of defenses and how they blitz or where everything's coming from. But I feel, it's just because everything was happening a little late that, we just had to stick with some other things. But I feel going into the offseason, when they start really learning and start getting, everything down, impact, we can do everything from running the ball inside, outside, counter. It doesn't matter. But I feel right now, we're doing the best that we can and what we have for them.
Linebacker DeMarvion Overshown also shared his thoughts on the players who stepped up.
Like I said earlier, with the University of Texas, we recruit players for this moment all the time. And just after the Kansas State game, you seen what the young pups can do, and I trust them. They trust me, and I trust them, and that's one thing about playing this game. It's 11 guys on the field, and you all got to trust each other in order to get the job done.
Casey Thompson, who stepped in for Sam Ellinger at the start of the second half, gave his thoughts on how his performance will impact the QB battle going into the offseason.
Well, when I went in the game, obviously, like I said, I just focus on one play at a time. And, I've been preparing every week and every day as if I'm going to be the starter. To me, that doesn't matter if I'm the first string, second string, third string, or even my freshman year when I was redshirted. So that's how I approach every day. And going into this game, that's how I approached it. And, there's no disrespect to the other guys, in the room, on the quarterback room, but we do a great job of pushing and competing each other, and I think it'll be a very fun off season. And as far as the quarterback battle, I have no say in that, but I can just control what I can control, and I think today I did that.
After this victory, Texas heads into the offseason ranked 19th nationally and under the helm of a new head coach, Steve Sarkisian. From the Alamo Dome, I'm John Kelley. TSTV Sports.
Well, now I want to welcome in our football analyst today, Clark Dalton, to discuss this big Alamo Bowl victory. Clark, thanks for joining us. Obviously, there are a lot of positives to take from a 55-23 victory, but what players really stood out to you in this game?
Adam, it was the coordination of Bijan Robinson. He had 183 yards on 10 carries. That's absolutely wild. And that's just the momentum he's been building off of at the end of the season. On 14 drives, when Bijan had multiple possessions, Texas scored 66 points. If he can keep this up and stay healthy, he's in that next line of great Texas running backs we talk about, the Earl Campbells of the world, the Ricky Williams of the world, the late Cedric Bensons of the world, Jamal Charles, and Deontay Foreman, who was the last Doak Walker winner. Bijan Robinson has the potential to be that good. And then quarterback Casey Thompson really stood out because at the beginning of last season, he was considering transferring, and he could have easily done that. He clearly has the ability to do that. He's a great athlete. He can read defenses easily, and he's a live arm. But he had the confidence within himself to say, you know what, I'm going to stay here, and I think I'll get my chance down the line. And he performed when given the opportunity. He was 8 for 10 in that game with 4 touchdown passes. And confidence is one of the most important traits as a quarterback. It's something you can't teach. You need to have that faith in yourself to know you can go out on the field and perform. And that was a huge showing for him.
Well, Clark, just 4 days after that bowl game victory, though, Texas made the big call to relieve Tom Herman of his duties and name Alabama offensive coordinator Steve Sarkisian as the next Longhorn head coach. Clark, this is a move that caught a lot of people by surprise. What are your thoughts on the firing of Tom Herman and the selection of Sarkisian to replace him?
I was shocked, to be honest, because it was just a few weeks before that Chris Del Conte typed that letter in support of Tom Herman saying he was the coach, but obviously they felt differently. And I didn't expect to hear Steve Sarkisian since it's been 5 years since he was a head coach at a major Division I program. As for the Tom Herman era, it's not that he's the worst coach ever. Tom Herman had his successes at Texas. Let's remember, he got them to a Big 12 championship game and a Sugar Bowl. It's just towards the end, he couldn't fulfill the lofty promises of we're going to win Big 12 titles every year. And that's what made boosters and fans impatient. And that's why I got the boot. And I think that Tom Herman will get another shot. And you have to remember, this is only his second head coaching job ever. And it's just something you have to learn over time. As for Steve Sarkisian, it is a bit of a gamble, but I will say this. I think he can be a very good coach on the 40 acres. His offense at Alabama was extremely innovative. You saw how Devontae Smith performed in that championship game at Ohio State. If he can get the recruits, there should be optimism heading into next season.
Looking at that optimism, Texas has taken some positive strides in the past 3 seasons. They have a 25-12 record over those past 3 seasons, and we're a perfect 3-0 in bowl games. Clark, what will be the key for Texas to continue this momentum in Steve Sarkisian's first year and for them to take that next step?
Adam, I could sit up here and tell you all the football things they have to do next offseason. The obvious one, beat Oklahoma, keep the best players in state, hire a good staff. And you can do all of those things, but still not get the results you want to. I want to use a quote from a guy you may have heard of, Tom Brady. He said, "Believe in yourself when no one will." And I think that's what Texas football needs to do right now. And I'm not saying belief like in the cheesy sense, but it's kind of like a summation of 3 things. It's confidence, it's optimism, and it's preparing with a purpose. And that purpose is to bring Texas back. And when you have that end goal in mind all the time, it allows you to focus even more. And it reminds you of being a part of something that's bigger than yourself. That's why you come and play college football. That's why we love the game. And when you have that, it makes you even more hungry to put in the work, and you're even more dedicated because you believe it's going to happen. Look, watching that game, there's something there with players like Alfred Collins, Casey Thompson, Bijan Robinson. The issue is not talent. That's not why Texas hasn't been back to the Big 12 championship yet. They're going to have 2 players drafted in the first round probably this year. It's just they need that little bit of extra swagger to get them back to the top, and they can do it if everything goes according to plan.
Well, Clark, it will definitely be fun to watch this Texas team under Steve Sarkisian. Thanks for joining us tonight. Next season, when we come back, we'll take a look back at Texas's hot start in men's hoops and look ahead to what is to come for the Longhorns. Don't go anywhere. You're watching College Press Box. Welcome back into College Press Box. There's been plenty of excitement in Austin regarding the hot start to the season made by Shaka Smart's men in Texas basketball. The Longhorns are currently ranked number 5 in the nation with an 11-2 record. The Longhorns got off to a 3-0 start in conference play before heading up to Morgantown, West Virginia for a matchup against the number 14 team in the nation. Despite trailing for the entire second half, the Longhorns ended the game on a 7-0 run, and Andrew Jones came up with a huge three-pointer with just seconds remaining. Here it is, kicked out, and Jones nails the open three to give the Longhorns a thrilling 72-70 victory. Next up, number 15, Texas Tech came to Austin. Despite leading for much of the game, much of the second half in this one, though, it was the exact opposite as the Longhorns fell short at the very end. Texas Tech's Mac McClung, you see him there pulling up and hitting the game-winning jumper as Texas Tech edged Texas 79-77. Finally, Texas looked to rebound against Kansas State when the Wildcats came to town back on Saturday, January the 16th, and rebound they did. Despite being without 3 players due to COVID-19 protocols, the Longhorns controlled proceedings as they jumped out to a 44-24 first half lead before coasting home for an 82-67 victory. Andrew Jones led the way with 19 points. Kamaka Hepa had 15 as well. However, due to the COVID-19 protocols at TCU and Iowa State, that has been the last game the Longhorns have played as we go on now for 10 days. Now I want to welcome in Jason Kinander into our virtual studio. Jason, how you doing?
I am doing great, Adam. How are you?
Doing good. My first question for you, Jason, as we start to look at this impressive start by Texas men's basketball, do you think this 10-day layoff due to COVID-19 protocols will have any adverse effect on the Longhorns when they take on Oklahoma?
I really don't think so. When you look at the Texas schedule leading up to the 2 games that were postponed last week, they really did have a tough stretch, obviously, playing in Lawrence against Kansas and then in Morgantown against West Virginia, and then the loss at home to Texas Tech. So, of course, the season keeps grinding, and at the end of it all, you need to be able to win games in consecutive days. But in this case, I think that the rest was a very good thing for the Longhorns. They definitely needed a break. I think that some of the players started to sort of slow down a little bit. The Kansas State game was good because it was obviously an easier opponent. But no, I don't think that they're going to come out flat-footed tomorrow against Oklahoma. The layoff, I think, will be of a benefit for Texas. They've certainly earned a break, whether this was a scripted break or not. And, yeah, I think that the team's going to keep rolling even with not having played a game in 9 days by tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure, Jason. You get in the blitz of college basketball season, and it's 2 games a week for these players. But now looking ahead, Texas has 3 big names coming up in its next 3 games as it battles against Oklahoma, Kentucky, and then Baylor. Jason, how do you see the Longhorns faring in these next 3 contests?
Well, of course, with the news of Shaka Smart being out off the sidelines due to COVID-19, I think that this changes things a little bit. Now, this Texas team is a veteran group. These guys have been here for a couple of years, and even the guys that haven't, like Kai Jones and Greg Brown, have seemed to get in the swing of things pretty quickly. So I will say that they're going to beat Oklahoma tomorrow. Even though Oklahoma is coming off of a big win against Kansas, I think that Texas is just a better team on paper. The Kentucky game in Lexington on Saturday could be a trap. Obviously, John Calipari's group is not nearly as good as they normally are, but Kentucky is Kentucky. So I don't think that the Longhorns should overlook them. That being said, I think that they'll win handily. The game that everyone's looking forward to, the biggest Texas sporting event of the year throughout any sport, number 2 Baylor coming to town. This game is going to be huge. I cannot say for sure whether or not Texas will win. I think that Shaka Smart's availability will be a huge factor. But with or without Shaka, I'm going to say it's going to be a close game. No surprise there. But we'll have to see. If Texas looks good against Oklahoma and against Kentucky and can pick up 2 easy wins against somewhat tough opponents, then I think that the Horns will have all the momentum that they need next Tuesday against Baylor. So I'll say they're guaranteed 2 wins, hopefully 3. 3 would certainly put them over the top, but as of right now, I'll say that Oklahoma and Kentucky are givens until the Baylor game on Tuesday.
Well, normally that Kentucky game would be a highly anticipated one, but the Wildcats are taking a bit of a step back this year. And just looking at this Texas team now, everyone returned from last year's squad to this year's team, and they added 5-star recruit Greg Brown, meaning this Texas team has plenty of depth. Jason, as we kind of head down the stretch here in the second half of the season, who is one breakout player to watch for the Longhorns?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with Jericho Sims here. When you look at the Big 12, especially with West Virginia big man Oscar Tshiebwe transferring, there are very few true standout centers in this conference. I'd say Kevin Samuel from TCU is one. David McCormick from Kansas is another. Other than that, Sims should have some very, very favorable matchups. The Kentucky game will be interesting. Kentucky has been playing bigger lately. They're more of a small ball team. They're not as much of a small ball team as they normally are. But against Oklahoma lacks what some would call a true center. I think Sims is going to have a big game on Tuesday. The Baylor game will be big. I don't think he'll be as involved as he will be against other teams. But I think down the stretch, we're going to see Jericho Sims finish his time in Austin on a really, really high note. We saw big performances against Kansas. We've seen big performances throughout the season from a guy who has really just been a defensive stopper his first 3 years in Austin. Now being on highlight reels every other game for big dunks. He's been a presence in the post on offense, offensive rebounding, defensive rebounding. Obviously, as I mentioned before, he's a big presence on defense. So I'm going to say Jericho Sims is going to be the breakout star for the Longhorns. It's pretty hard to pick considering how many great players are on this team, but I'm going to have to go with Sims.
Yeah, Jason, the Longhorns are definitely loaded. It'll be fun to watch them down the stretch. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Anytime.
When we come back, we'll head up I-35 to Dallas to recap the UIL High School State Championships that took place just over a week ago. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back into College Press Box. After the 5A and 6A high school football seasons were delayed by a month due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the state title games for those conferences had to be rescheduled to January. That means there were 4 state titles on the line 2 weekends ago at the AT&T Stadium in Arlington. Here's a look back at the weekend jam-packed of high school football action.
The Texas high school football world converged on AT&T Stadium last weekend as teams in conferences 5A and 6A played for their respective state titles. The first matchup pitted powerhouse Aledo against Crosby. Crosby struck first as Deniquez Dunn found Jalen Herman on a slant route, but Aledo soon took over. Aledo running back DeMarco Roberts rushed for 254 yards and 6 touchdowns as Aledo turned a 14-7 first quarter deficit into a commanding 56-21 victory, setting a state record with its 10th state title. Playing amidst a pandemic, the state title was even sweeter for Aledo linebacker Caden Anderson.
Early in the summer and in the spring, we had thought there's a possibility that we probably won't get to play. And getting to play this season, it's been awesome. And going to win a state championship in this type of year, it's indescribable.
Next, Denton Ryan took on Cedar Park in the 5A Division I title game. With Ryan up 10-8, Seth Hennigan connected with Keegan Cunningham for a 52-yard touchdown reception to extend the Raiders' lead. From there, the game belonged to Ryan. The Raider defense was dominant all night, forcing 4 turnovers, including a fumble recovery for touchdown to open the third quarter that extended the Ryan lead to 38-8. A late touchdown catch by Texas commit Jatavion Sanders was the icing on the cake as Ryan earned its first state title since 2002 with a 59-14 victory that had special meaning to Ryan head coach Dave Hennigan and the Denton community.
In a year where there's been so much strife and on a lot of people, to be a small part to bring something special and something positive back to that community, I couldn't be more proud to be part of it. My coaching staff deserves a ton of credit. And obviously, these kids deserve all the credit.
Katy and Cedar Hill opened proceedings on Saturday in the 6A Division II title game. In a tight first quarter, Katy drew first blood on a 37-yard pass from Caleb Koger to Taylor Salisbury. The Tigers never looked back from there. Katy dominated on the ground, rushing for 298 yards and held a 24-0 lead at halftime, thanks in part to a 55-yard touchdown run by Isaiah Smith. In the second half, the Tiger defense wreaked havoc with 2 defensive touchdowns, a 55-yard fumble recovery by Hamilton McMartin, and an impressive pick six by defensive end Cal Varner as Katie cruised to a 51-14 victory. After having a 75-game district win streak snapped this season, the Tigers rebounded by earning their 9th state title overall.
I told them at the district loss that, the last time it happened, we turned around and won a state championship because of the resolve and the drive these kids have, and they refuse to lose. And I'm extremely proud of them and what they've done.
The final game of the weekend saw the Westlake Chaparrals and their head coach, Todd Dodge, take on his son Riley Dodge, the head coach of the Southlake Carroll Dragons. The teams traded big plays early as Zane Miners broke off a 75-yard run for Westlake on its first offensive play. Well, Southlake Carroll responded with a 49-yard pass from Quinn Ewers to Brady Boyd, who spun out of 2 tacklers for the touchdown. That back-and-forth nature continued throughout the half as Westlake held a narrow 28-21 lead at the interval. However, the second half belonged to the Chaparrals. Cornerback Michael Taft flipped momentum with a big interception early in the half, while running back Gray Knackfor and quarterback Kate Klubnik combined for 3 second-half rushing touchdowns as the Chaparrals pulled away for a 52-34 victory, earning their 2nd consecutive state title. After the game, Todd Dodge expressed his pride in his team for earning a tough victory.
What an unbelievable game that was. We knew going into it that we were going to be in a knockdown drag-out, and we were. And so hats off to them. My football team, I've told them all along. I've told them again tonight after the game. I'll tell them every time I get an opportunity that collectively they absolutely love the game of football. They have a passion for the game, and it was such a big deal for us.
But in the end, it's a testament to coaches, players, and administration all across Texas that this high school football season even happened and that they were able to pull off all 12 of these state title games. For TSTV Sports, I'm Adam Ogburn.
It certainly was a season that won't be soon forgotten as the state of Texas found a way to play high school football while still adhering to COVID-19 protocols. But when we come back after the break, we'll take a look at Longhorns in the NBA and all the other action happening around the 40 acres. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back into College Press Box. It's time to take a look now at how former Longhorn players are faring in the NBA. Starting off in Brooklyn, Kevin Durant's Nets struggled last week with 2 consecutive losses to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Durant scored 38 points in the first game, which was a double overtime loss, and did not play in the second game as a precaution as he continues to recover from Achilles surgery. Durant and the Nets rebounded though on Saturday with a tight 128-124 victory, where Durant contributed 31 points. Jared Allen, meanwhile, settled into Cleveland after being involved in the James Harden trade. He scored 12 points and 19 points in 2 wins over Brooklyn before putting up 12 points and securing 7 rebounds in a blowout loss to Boston on Sunday. And finally, as you saw in the video, Miles Turner has put together 2 impressive games for the Pacers. He scored 22 points and grabbed 9 boards in a 120-118 overtime win over Orlando on Friday, while on Sunday he scored 25 points and secured 4 rebounds in a narrow 107-102 defeat to Toronto. We'll stay on the basketball court as we turn our focus back to Austin. Texas women's basketball team has gotten off to an 11-3 start in their first season under Vic Schaefer, and the Longhorns claimed another big win this past Saturday as they vanquished Iowa State 70-59 behind 22 points and 19 rebounds by Charlie Collier. They also had 16 points from Joanne Allen Taylor. The win got the Longhorns on the precipice of being ranked as they fell just 14 points short of being the number 25 team in the nation. Heading over to Dish Falk Field, there's plenty of positivity surrounding Texas baseball based on the recently released D1 Top 25 baseball poll. The Longhorns were ranked number 9 after finishing last season 14-3 when the season was halted by the coronavirus pandemic. The Longhorns will open their season in just over 3 weeks' time when they take on number 7 Mississippi State in the State Farm Classic at Globe Life Park in Arlington on February 19th. Texas women's tennis team continued a top start for the season with a 4-0 sweep of number 23 Baylor. The Longhorns won 2 of the 3 double matches, while Lulu Sun, Fernanda Lebrana, and Charlotte Shavadapo claim victories in singles play to secure victory. Texas will be back in action on Saturday when it takes on Oklahoma in Norman. Texas men's tennis team also stayed undefeated as it took down number 9 Florida this past weekend. Florida took the point from the doubles matchups, but the Longhorns got victories by Siem Woldib, Elliot Sparizi, Cleve Harper, and Chi Huang in 4 of the 6 singles matchups. That was enough to boost Texas to a narrow 4-3 victory over the Gators. Next up for the Longhorns is a visit from Baylor this upcoming Saturday. Moving from tennis over to track and field, Texas shot put legend Ryan Crouser broke a world record on Sunday at the American Track League meet. Crouser broke the indoor shot put record, launching the orb 74 feet and 10.5 inches, 6 1/4 inches further than the previous world record, which was set all the way back in 1989 by Randy Barnes. Now moving on, looking at this week in Texas sports. Texas men's basketball team will host Oklahoma at home on Tuesday at 6 p.m. before they travel to Lexington for a big matchup in the Big 12 SEC Challenge against Kentucky. Women's basketball is also in action twice over the coming week as they travel to Stillwater on Wednesday to take on Oklahoma State at 6:30 before welcoming Texas Tech into Austin on Saturday at 7. Lastly, on the tennis court, Texas men's tennis team will host Baylor at 12 o'clock, while Texas women's tennis will travel up to Oklahoma to take on the Sooners at 3 o'clock on Saturday. That is all we have for our show tonight. Make sure to tune to College Crossfire on Wednesday nights at 9 o'clock for the best sports debate on the 40 acres. And wake up with the 1-0 Sports Show on Friday mornings at 10 to get you caught up on all you need to know from the past week in sports. From all of us in the virtual studio who made tonight's show possible, I'm Adam Ogburn. Have a great rest of your evening.